This year, for the second time ever, the WNBA All-Star Game was supposed to feature an actual star. Normally, this celebration of pretend basketball features players that no one's ever heard of.
Story we have been following throughout the past 2 days surrounds a superstar herself, Caitlin Clark, the WNBA star, the Indiana Fever star, Caitlin Clark. She's going to miss all the action on the court.
Instead of packed out seats and a wild crowd, fans were met with empty rows and straight up awkward silence in the air. The All-Star Game? Total chaos. Some fans were so over it, they didn't even show up. They straight up ditched the whole thing. And now everybody's asking, how did the league manage to fumble a hometown tribute for their top star and turn it into a financial flop? When Kathy Engelbert finally broke her silence about the ref drama during All-Star Weekend, what she said just made things even messier. What really went down pulled the curtain back on something deeper: how the WNBA treats the very players who bring in the noise and actually fill the seats. These are the names fans pull up for, and they're the ones getting left hanging? Drop your take in the comments. Do you think the league will ever stop playing around and finally get it right? Now, let's talk about Indy. The moment you stepped foot in Indianapolis, there was one name everybody kept shouting: Caitlin Clark. That's the real reason fans were pulling up. Local shops were buzzing. They stocked up like crazy, hired extra hands, and were ready for a serious payday. Tickets at Gainbridge Fieldhouse? Gone in hours. The cheapest seat? $121. Average resale? Around $262. And the front row spots? We're talking thousands. TickPick even said it was the priciest WNBA All-Star Game ever. But then, crash. The ticket prices didn't just dip, they straight up fell off a cliff. You could watch the numbers drop like it was a countdown. Those 262 seats slashed to just $64 after one major update dropped online. That's a wild 75% crash. Sellers panicked. Folks who thought they were about to cash out were suddenly stuck trying to unload tickets for pennies on the dollar. Ticket prices dropped from $121 all the way down to just $65, and even then, barely anybody was biting. That's how wild it got.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of physicality that they're able to play with against her. I knew it as an opponent, and I see it as her coach. I'm not exactly sure why, but it just is what it is. And we've got to help her learn to adjust and use it against them in certain ways. We've got to find some ways to make it a little bit easier for her. But the level of physicality overall in our league has been at a different level than it's been for a long time.
I know as a fan of sports for 60 years now, I know that, no one's ever happy with officiating. All sports deal with it, but we're working hard to make sure we're putting the best product out on the court, and our officiating then.
This wasn't some slow decline over a few days. This was a straight-up crash happening in real time right in front of the internet. A full-on disaster for the league. What makes it even worse? This isn't new. The warning signs were already blinking red. Back in May, when Caitlin Clark had to sit out with that quad strain, ticket prices took serious hits. DC saw a brutal 47% drop. And that hyped-up Chicago game? It tanked by a whopping 71%. And keep in mind, those were just regular season matchups. But this time, this was different. This was the All-Star Game, in her hometown. The stakes were higher, and the crash, way uglier. The league had never seen anything like it before. Gainbridge Fieldhouse was feeling the pressure big time. For the first time in nearly 2 years, they were about to miss a sellout. That's huge. Since Clark's debut, the Fever had been playing in packed arenas. Every single game. But now, on All-Star Weekend, whole sections were sitting empty. This was supposed to be the biggest basketball moment in Indy since the NBA All-Star Game, and it was slipping through their fingers. And let's talk money, because it was bleeding everywhere. Local shops had dropped thousands on exclusive All-Star merch, and now they were stuck with stacks of it just sitting there. Restaurants and hotels had geared up for non-stop business, but then came the cancellations. Tables stayed empty. Rooms went unused. It was a citywide letdown, and nobody expected the fall to hit this hard. The money meltdown didn't just hit the arena, it slammed all of downtown Indianapolis. You could feel the tension in the air. Reality hit fast. This wasn't just about one player missing one game. This was something way bigger. And fans weren't staying quiet. They made their message crystal clear. We're here for Clark. That's what everyone was saying loud. When other big names sit out, the ticket sales might dip a little, but they don't crash like this. Without Caitlin Clark in the mix, the whole All-Star game lost its spark, and fans decided it just wasn't worth pulling up for. Here's the part the league didn't want to say out loud. Their entire record-breaking season? Yeah, it's been riding on Clark's shoulders the whole time. Take her out, and suddenly the packed arenas, TV ratings, and booming sales all start to look shaky. Real shaky. And let's talk about that injury. It didn't just pop up overnight. That groin strain was the result of months of Clark getting shoved, hacked, and slammed on the court, while the refs kept their whistles in their pockets. Teams figured it out quick. Rough her up, get physical, and don't worry about fouls. The officials were letting it slide game after game. Coach Stephanie White saw it coming from day one. She's been sounding the alarm all season, calling out how Clark gets hit with a whole different level of contact that no other player has to deal with. And she wasn't making it up. Every single game, she watched her star get...
How did we get to an All-Star game in Indiana where Caitlin Clark is not healthy enough to play? Well, it all started last year, in her rookie season, where she received 20% of all the flagrant fouls in the league. And most of them came from Angel Reese in the Chicago Sky. And these weren't basketball plays. They were not only fouling her, but they were getting up, laughing about it, laughing about Caitlin Clark getting assaulted. Any other work environment, people go to jail for what's going on.
But when it comes to the vendors in the arena, the shops in the arena, they're not going to have the same amount of people patronize their business as they would if Caitlin Clark was there. The surrounding restaurants, the surrounding areas, the surrounding attractions, they're not going to have the same number of people
It wasn't just unfair, it was straight up reckless. And now the whole league is dealing with the fallout. Let's be real about what was happening on that court. It was madness. Even the Washington Post didn't hold back. They called out the sloppy, low-grade officiating that was turning WNBA games into something out of WWE. No cap. They even joked the league might as well change its logo to a bruise and the slogan to no call. That's how bad it got. Fans weren't making stuff up either. There's footage all over the internet. Defenders were hooking Clark's arms, pushing her off screens, and smacking her on the way to the rim. And the refs just stood there like they couldn't see a thing. No whistles, no fouls, not a single call. It was like the refs clocked in just to chill courtside. That kind of officiating sent a loud message, and not the right one. It basically told teams, go ahead, get physical. So what happened? A trend kicked off. Teams started targeting Clark on purpose because they knew they could get away with it. And Clark? She was left to deal with the hits, the bumps, and the bruises with no backup. Here's where it gets real shady. In other major leagues, stars usually get some protection. You don't see top players getting thrown around like crash test dummies. But Clark? She's been out there taking full contact abuse while the refs act like they forgot their whistles at home. And if you're thinking this is just how the game goes, think again. The numbers don't lie. The Washington Post reported 57 head and neck injuries in just the last 2.5 seasons. And guess who's taking the brunt of it? Guards and small forwards. That's not random. It's a straight-up pattern of dangerous play happening over and over. And what's the league doing about it? Absolutely nothing. They're watching it unfold like it's no big deal. Lisa Leslie knows exactly what Caitlin Clark is going through. The WNBA legend dealt with a serious groin injury back in 2006, and she's been honest. Those kinds of injuries can drag on for months, even years. Now Clark's facing that same battle, not from some freak fall, but because refs kept turning a blind eye and letting the physical stuff slide. This wasn't some accident. It wasn't just part of the game. It was the exact kind of mess you end up with when a league refuses to protect its stars. Every time Clark got snatched up with no call, Every time she got hit and the refs stayed silent, it was all leading up to this moment.
They had that injury 2006, and listen, I was heavily taped around my thigh, around my glute, just trying to make sure there was enough pressure to hold that groin. And the hard part is that the groin is sort of an area that you can't just touch and go, it hurts right here. You feel it deep. You have to get a lot of deep treatment, whether it's ice and heat and rest. Well, Caitlin Clark, she can't find a lot of rest right now because she's mid-season. But I think that injury is really tough because it lingers. No matter how much medicine you take, you can feel fine. You get back out there, one move, one change of direction, and boom, you're right back feeling that same type of pain. So it's going to be a tough injury that she's going to have to manage.
How long did it take you to recover from?
To be honest, Tracy, I play tennis and I can still feel that injury linger because I don't know that it ever really goes away. You just learn to manage and play with it.
And now, the WNBA is looking at a full-on crisis. Millions lost in ticket sales, merch money drying up, and all that hype gone in a blink. All because they couldn't bother to protect the one player holding up the whole operation. And fans? They weren't just upset, they mobilized. People started organizing boycotts, and ticket prices started tanking in real time. You could literally watch the market crash. Fans were done pretending everything was fine. Everybody was watching to see what WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert would do next. This was her shot, her chance to step up, take control, and finally speak on the messy officiating that led to Caitlin Clark's injury. But what did she do instead? She hit fans with the most dry, corporate-style answer you could imagine. When folks pressed her about the ref drama during All-Star Weekend, Engelbert didn't give real answers. Just a bunch of executive talk that dodged the entire problem. No real responsibility, no straight talk. Just vague buzzwords that made fans even more frustrated. She pulled together over 40 players and league folks for what she called a productive and constructive meeting, talking about goals, vision, and unity. But come on, she completely skipped over the one thing people actually cared about. Nobody was asking for feel-good PR fluff. They wanted real action and answers about why Clark kept getting hit with no protection while refs just watched. Meanwhile, while ticket prices were crashing and downtown businesses were bleeding cash, Engelbert was out here talking about profitability and having positive dialogue. The disconnect? Crazy. Fans were speaking loud and clear by not showing up, and she acted like everything was just fine. What did fans really want? Something real. A raw, honest admission that the officiating had been sloppy, that players like Clark were getting targeted night after night with no calls, that the league actually saw the problem and was ready to fix it. But instead of giving fans something real, they got hit with corporate buzzwords like alignment and collaboration. Nothing solid, nothing honest. Just empty PR fluff while the WNBA's biggest weekend straight up fell apart. Engelbert's response wasn't just weak, it was tone deaf. She sounded completely disconnected from the fans, the players, and the moment itself.
This right here, Caitlin Clark, the banner right there on the JW Marriott. It is 34 stories banner, unbelievable. Is the largest banner ever on the JW Marriott. You may think about the bracket. Remember back in the NCAA tournament back in 2021? Yeah, it's bigger than that as well. 113,000 square feet. It is unbelievable. And you see what it says from downtown in my town. No doubt, this is something that is grabbing everyone's attention. And who else better to be on that than the star herself, Caitlin Clark?
A bunch of players and coaches over the last few days have complained without being fine-worthy about officiating. I just want to see about your thoughts on if officiating is an issue and how it can be improved, because clearly there seems to be problems or disconnect between what players and coaches feel and what officials are actually calling.
While local shops were taking hits and restaurants were watching empty tables, she kept clinging to her stay-the-course mindset like nothing was wrong. By refusing to call out the officiating mess directly, she didn't ease the backlash. She poured fuel on it. Instead of cooling things down, she cranked the heat way up. Now fans are asking the real question: can the WNBA actually change? When your top star gets hurt because refs don't do their jobs, and your big response is some vague talk about positive dialogue, that's when you know the league's lost the plot. Fans weren't fooled. Not for a second. They saw through the PR smoke and answered by bouncing. Ticket sales crashed, support disappeared. The whole vibe flipped from hype to disappointment overnight. And what did the league end up with? An all-star game that fans were calling an embarrassment to the sport. No Caitlin Clark, no clear plan, and a commissioner dodging every real issue like it wasn't all crashing down around her. The WNBA tried to hype up a product without their main draw. And the result? Brutal. Just plain brutal. The All-Star Game was supposed to be the moment of the season, a wild, packed-out celebration with real energy. But instead, Gainbridge Fieldhouse had empty seats, zero buzz, and slow, boring basketball. The whole thing felt less like a showdown and more like a lazy scrimmage nobody really cared about. And to make it worse, that goofy four-point shot gimmick turned the whole game into a joke. What fans got was what one insider straight up called a glorified layup line. Players were just tossing up shots from way downtown with no defense, no drive, and no real pride in the game. It was straight up embarrassing. The league tried to deliver a show, but without their main attraction, it totally flopped. The All-Star Game wasn't a highlight. It was a full-on spotlight on everything going wrong with how the WNBA's being run. There was no hustle, no fire, no real competition. It was like watching the game in slow motion. And fans who came for real basketball, they felt completely left out. And guess what ended up stealing the spotlight? Not a player, not a buzzer beater, a mascot. Yep, the New York Liberty's mascot trying to recruit Caitlin Clark became the biggest headline of the weekend.
And last year, I noticed how much it was just Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark was taking all the hits. Caitlin Clark was taking all the abuse. But this year they've added Sophie Cunningham. She gets more flagrant fouls on her than anybody in the league besides Caitlin Clark. And Aaliyah Boston, she's been taking hits as well. But the worst thing is the consistency. So they don't call flagrant fouls, or most of the time, Caitlin Clark could be held for an entire game at a time. They don't call fouls. They don't call common fouls. But then when it's the Indiana Fever, guess what? Touch foul here, touch foul here. They call absolutely nothing.
Let that sink in. A mascot made more noise than the All-Stars on the court. That one moment said it all. While the league was sleepwalking through its biggest event of the year, the Liberty were out here making power moves. Their mascot's bold pitch to Clark stole the show. And honestly, it proved they get it. When you've got a superstar, you don't play games. You treat her like gold. That whole mascot moment completely stole the show. And honestly, there wasn't much happening on the court to compete with it anyway. Let's keep it real. There was barely any action worth watching out there. This was the WNBA's first major test without Caitlin Clark, and they totally flopped. The difference between the high-energy regular season games and this sleepy All-Star dud was like night and day. When Clark's on the floor, there's electricity. Fans are locked in, stadiums buzzing, and the vibe is real. But take her out? The excitement disappears fast. This game put it on full display. The league is leaning hard on one player to keep the whole thing alive. And here's the real story. The Clark effect goes way beyond just buckets and ticket sales. It's about the future of women's basketball. It's about whether the league can actually ride this wave and build something lasting.
From $121 all the way down to just $64 after news broke that Caitlin Clark won't be playing. These are people saying, I'm done. I don't want to watch. Caitlin Clark's not. I bought tickets solely to watch Caitlin Clark in the All-Star game. I made accommodations solely to get to Indiana to watch Caitlin Clark in the All-Star game. She is injured. I have no interest in that anymore. People are selling their tickets so much so they just want off of them. 121, okay. You want it for 100? Oh no, okay. I guess I gotta lower it to 80. Oh, you don't want to buy it for 80? Okay, I guess I'll lower it to 70. You don't want to buy it to 70? I guess I'll lower it to $64. The WNBA is paying attention to these trends. And they're seeing firsthand what Caitlin Clark is worth to this league.
But after this All-Star weekend fell apart, fans sent their message loud and clear, with their wallets. And that message? The WNBA can't keep fumbling like this. Empty seats, crashing ticket prices, brutal reactions all over social media. This wasn't just about Clark sitting out. It was a major red flag about how out of sync the league is with what fans actually want. They've been bragging for months about record views and historic growth, but this weekend ripped the cover off all of it. Take Caitlin Clark out of the mix, and what's left? A product most fans weren't even checking for. They didn't show up, they didn't tune in. This wasn't just a failed event, it was a wake-up call. The league was handed a once-in-a-generation superstar, and she brought packed houses, monster ratings, and a brand new audience. And somehow, they still dropped the ball. Instead of backing the one player who brought in sold-out arenas, record ratings, and nationwide buzz, they let weak officiating and out-of-touch leadership steer the ship. And what did they get? A full-blown mess that showed just how fast it can all fall apart when you forget who's really driving the hype. But don't get it twisted. This all-star disaster isn't where Caitlin Clark's story ends. If anything, it's fans rising up and saying loud, "Step it up." This wasn't just a moment. It was a warning shot. The league has to evolve or risk losing everything Clark helped build. Now here's the real question. Will the WNBA finally wake up and fix what's broken? Or will they keep stumbling till there's nothing left to save? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear from you. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single twist in this crazy ride. Share this with your crew and hit that next video on screen. We'll catch you in the next one.